and yet neither her inseparable older sister, nor even Giselle herself, seemed in the least perturbed by the terrifying accident. Decidedly not normal, and I intended to find out why. When I was drafted into the Princess tourney, along with my friends Lily and Sophie, and all of the local princesses, I had been newly arrived from the Four Kingdoms. I had known no one from these lands, but I had made plenty of friends during the months of the tourney. Emmeline and Giselle had not been among them. So it had shocked me when the sisters invited me to visit them after the tourney ended. What could possibly have motivated them to do so? The whole thing smelled of adventure, and if there was one thing I couldn't resist, it was the prospect of an adventure. Idiotic, that's what I was. I reflected sadly as I watched the snow build up beside the road. Why couldn't I have found an adventure somewhere with a warm climate? I had already put off the invitation until after Lily and Sophie's joint wedding, remaining behind in Marin when Emmeline and Giselle returned home after the tourney. And then my mother, along with one of my brothers and his wife, had sailed over from the Four Kingdoms for the twins' wedding. They couldn't sail home in winter, and my mother insisted I remain in Palinar with them for the duration of their visit. I think my mother was surprised at my acquiescence, my brother less so, at least once he heard the stories about the climate in Eldon. But come spring, I had grown altogether tired of being back under my family's wing, and decided it was time to follow through on my promise to visit Eldon. It was spring, after all. How cold could it be? I shivered again, this time directing the grumbles at myself. I glanced at the girls across from me. How would they react if I made my complaints aloud? So far, common courtesy had been holding me back, but my curiosity to see their reaction was growing by the minute. It was horribly tempting to see how far I would have to push to get a response from the detached princesses. I had actually been a little touched when all three of the younger Eldonian royals had travelled down from the capital to meet my ship at the port. Touched enough that I had even insisted on taking the front seat, so that I faced backward, and they were both able to travel forward. But we had now been stuck in the carriage together for some time, and I could no more see a reason for their coming to meet me than for their making the invitation in the first place. They certainly weren't expending any further effort to make me feel welcome. And Prince Oliver had managed no more greeting than a murmured, "Princess Celine," and a head nod. My mother had wondered if the Icy Kingdom was hoping for a marriage alliance with my distant kingdom of Lanover, but after meeting the Eldonians at the wedding in Palinar, she had been forced to admit that neither the Eldonian delegation, nor Prince Oliver himself, seemed in the least interested in either the Lanoverians or me, their youngest princess. A pang in my right ankle made me scowl. The broken bone had healed months ago, but it still sometimes ached in the cold. An unpleasant reminder of the ordeal of the tourney. My mother seemed to think the tourney should have been adventure enough for her seventh child, and couldn't understand what pulled me to visit Eldon. But the tourney hadn't been my adventure. Not really. At least not after I had broken my ankle in the first trial. The tourney had been the twins' adventure, and I had been nothing but a burden on the 11 other princesses. At least my mother knew me well enough not to argue. With 6 older siblings, I had long ago determined to find my own path. I had always longed to get out of the shadow of a family full of far too many outstanding royals. My one fear had been that my mother would insist the Duchess of Cecily accompany me to Eldon. The older noble was far too canny for my taste, one of the few who could see through whatever scheme I currently had underway. But it seemed the Duchess was needed back in the Four Kingdoms, so I had received a reprieve. I had been saddled with the usual collection of guards and maids and such, of course, but I didn't mind them. None of them would attempt to manage me. For the first time ever, I was truly on my own, and I relished every moment of it. At least until a fresh blast of freezing air somehow swept its way through the carriage. Hopeless dreams of Lanover's bright sandy beaches filled my mind, until a sudden lurch sent me tumbling off the seat and onto the 2 other princesses. The tangle of girls and rugs took some moments to straighten out, our efforts impeded by the strange new tilt of the now stationary carriage. Emmeline was the first to free herself, moving over toward the door, but instead of opening it, she shifted back toward us.